Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my sewing room. Now if you watched my last project on the robe a la Francaise, then you will know that there was one element that I kind of wanted to make for that whole project that I realized probably about 2 weeks before I finished it that there was not going to be time for that, and that was a new chemise, or shift as I think it was more commonly known in the 18th century. Now a chemise or a shift is the innermost undergarment that you wear under basically like all of history. I would say from, I don't even know how far back, like as far back as I feel like people had clothes, you know, don't quote me on that, all the way through. Really it started to change like a lot more in the early 20th century, though frankly I still wear a camisole under everything. It's just that now camisoles are worn over bras instead of under stays and corsets. So I am going to be making this using the simplicity pattern that goes along with the simplicity pattern that I used for the robe a la Francaise, which I know had a lot of issues, and I can already tell that this is going to have some issues as well. But I am a glutton for punishment, apparently, and it looks good on Abby, but we also know from the robe a la Francaise pattern that what is in the pattern is not what Abby is wearing. So that could be the case here too. So we shall see. I am also, because again, glutton for punishment, I'm also actually going to use the slubby lightweight cotton that I had purchased from Michaels that I said I was going to return, and then I just have not made it to Michaels yet. But frankly, the Kona cotton that I got from Michaels, which I will be using for other projects, it's just too heavyweight for a garment like this. Chemises and shifts are supposed to be out of like a much softer and lighter weight cotton. So although this is slubby and feels fairly awful, this is what we're going to use, especially because I only spent $7.72 on this for 4 yards, so it feels like it's barely worth going to Michael's to return anyway. So I'm going to pop this into the washing machine and hopefully it will wash even softer, because right now, although it is kind of like thin and lightweight, it is not the softest. Now, my current shift that I wear, I made in 2011. So yeah, it's really freaking old. It's 14 and a half years old, and I wear it for everything 18th century and everything Regency, and actually I think it's the same one that I also wear for everything 1830s. So all of that span of time, I wear the same shape of shift, but I hate it at the same time. I've never liked the neckline. There's something about it where like it just always wants to show, and it always feels like it's falling off the shoulders. So my hope is that this is going to be better. So that said, looking at this pattern, there are already significant changes that need to be made. For one, as per usual with so many simplicity patterns, this is not size inclusive. And in fact, it's like, seems more size exclusive than normal, considering this is supposed to be a fairly free-flowing garment. The hip measurement on this is 48.5 inches at the largest. Like, I'm pretty sure that's smaller than most simplicity size 22s. That seems very small. And this pattern says that it's supposed to have 6.5 inches of ease, which means that it would be a 42-inch hip measurement for a size 22. I find that very hard to believe. And in fact, actually looking at the pattern envelope, the size 22 should have a 46-inch hip measurement. So I don't know why this pattern that is supposed to have 6.5 inches of ease says that it's actually a 48.5-inch finished hip measurement. That makes no sense whatsoever. So obviously we have to increase that significantly. However, the bust is also small. The bust, it has a lot more ease, but it's a 51-inch bust for a size 22, and again it says that it's 6.5 inches of ease. Not on me, that's for sure. So we are going to increase this entire pattern. With the robe a la Francaise, I had increased it up to a size 26 to begin with. I don't know that that's going to be enough of an increase for this pattern, so I'll have to do a little bit of math with this and see, but particularly for the hip, I don't think that's going to be enough of an increase. The other thing that is the issue here is where the bust point is and how short the shoulder is. So this is the bust point right here on the front piece. And when I put that approximately where my bust is, which is hard to do without actually looking in a mirror, this is the shoulder. That's the shoulder. That is the shoulder. You know, it's supposed to be up here. It's really short. Like when I first held this up to me, not looking where the bust point was, I was like, oh, we got a high neckline here. This is a little crazy. No, the neckline is also supposed to be down here. So we have to add significantly to this shoulder piece, which means that we probably also have to add to the sleeve. I have not looked at the sleeve yet to see, you know, how big around it is, but frankly, it looks pretty small. There is a gusset that goes into this as well, but like this as an armhole, I don't know, that seems pretty small. So I have to measure that and see. I mean, again, it does get opened up a little bit with the gusset, so maybe. But I think that by the time we increase the shoulder, we are also going to have to increase this likewise. Now, this one does have a little bit longer of a sleeve than what I am used to personally in my chemises. So I think that I am probably going to shorten this sleeve because since I wear this with so many eras, I'm not wearing it under the same like gown sleeve the whole time. And especially with Regency, you wind up with a lot of sleeves that are like slightly on the sheer side. And this I almost feel like would actually be longer, frankly, than a lot of Regency sleeves. So, oh yeah, that definitely needs shortening because, in fact, by the time we look at where it probably sits on the shoulder, we're basically to the elbow. So that is not going to work. We're going to shorten that up significantly. So yeah, lots of changes to be made here. I have to wash my fabric first, and while I do that, I am going to math all of this out and make all of my changes. But we are going to use this as the base, and hopefully it will go together easily, and hopefully it will fit. Even with all these changes we have to make, hopefully it will fit, and hopefully it will fit me better than the neckline on the old one. The biggest difference here is that this is not a drawstring neckline, or at least I looked through the instructions, the entire instructions, and I did not see anything about a drawstring. I don't know what is typical, to be honest, if shifts generally did have drawstrings or not. I kind of trust Abby to know what is typical, so I'm gonna go with probably no. My old one did have a drawstring, so that might have been the problem of why it wasn't fitting as well. If this winds up being a little gappy, I might add in a simple drawstring anyway. But let's go ahead, throw this in the wash, and do a bunch of math and see how much we have to increase these patterns by. Editing Rebecca here, popping in with a quick reminder that if you are watching this video right when it comes out, there are only 3 weeks left to join in on the Ireland Castle stay. If you missed that entire announcement, I did talk about it in last week's video, but basically August 7th through 14th, 2026, we are going to go stay in an Irish castle as a group, and we are going to be doing like group photography with different costume themes and going and seeing beautiful locations around Ireland. So if you are interested in joining that trip, all of the details are linked down below in the description. Please go check it out there. Send me a DM if you have any questions, and all of the instructions on how to actually join into the trip are also linked down below at that link in the description. So I really, really hope that you can join us in Ireland. I'm so excited. So definitely go check that out below. Now on to the sewing project. All right, I've been mathing, and the reason that the hip measurement is so small in this pattern is because it's not. It's a misprint. I just measured around the hip on the pattern, removing all of the seam allowances, and the hip on the size 22 is 60 inches, not 48.5. That's a really big difference. Hi, Simplicity. Why are we misprinting that badly? Wow. So yeah, not 48.5 inches. I haven't measured the bust to see if that one is also wrong. The bust measurement at least sounded slightly more reasonable, but I suppose I should measure that one also to see if that is equally as off. The bust is also wrong in the opposite direction. It says it's a 51 inch. It's 48 inches in this pattern. So I don't know who got drunk and printed this pattern, but if you are using this pattern, measure things first, because so far nothing makes sense. So what that means is that sizing this up to the equivalent of a size 26 would give me an extra like 2.5 inches in the bust, meaning it would take me to a 50.5 inch bust. Now, it is possible that maybe they are somehow considering the bust size to also be coming from the gusset. That seems very odd to me. I wouldn't personally factor that into bust size because I feel like that's not generally the same place. Usually I feel like a gusset would end above the bust. I guess we'll see how this actually goes together. I could be wrong. But yeah, basically a 50.5 inch bust. My bust is 49 inches. So like, if this is really legitimately supposed to have 6.5 inches of ease, which I feel like sounds good for chemise, that sounds reasonable, then we need to really increase this. The other place that we are really increasing this is the shoulder. I measured it out. It's 3 3/8 inches too short just in the front. So I assume the back is probably the same or just about. So I'm going to be adding those 6 3/4 inches into the shoulder, between the back and the front combined. And I'm going to be increasing this obviously quite far past a 26. What I'm going to do is, my chemise is currently in the wash because I just wore it to the salon. So when that comes out of the wash, I am going to give that a quick measurement to see just what it is around, because that part of it is fine. I think it's good, in fact. And so that way I can compare to see how much this needs to get sized up to. Because right now I'm feeling like I really picked the wrong pattern and that this pattern maybe never should have been printed. And it just dawned on me, I wonder if this is also in the American Duchess book. Not that like any measurements are given in this book, which is kind of the downfall of it. I don't know that chemises are in here at all, so it might be moot. I was hoping maybe we could compare. Yeah, I'm not seeing a chemise in here, so I'll give a quick look past just the table of contents, but I'm not seeing it come up there. So I think that we are out of luck for any comparison there. So I guess I will just have to wait until mine comes out of the wash and I can compare it to my existing chemise. My old chemise is out of the wash, so I've just measured it, and there's 8 inches of ease in this bust and then like 12 inches or something like that in the hips. This is also significantly shorter than what this pattern shows, but I don't mind the length, I guess, really either way. I'm just used to this. I wouldn't mind it to be a little bit longer. I think that'd be good. We'll see if I want it quite as long as this pattern, because it does seem quite long. You can see the shorter sleeves that I have in this. So I'm torn as to whether, if I have a bust on this new one that is maybe, you know, 6 inches wider or not even 6 inches wider than my bust, like, is that going to make the neckline fit better? Because that's the main issue that I have with this one, is neckline, shoulder sort of sleeve issue. And I don't know where all that stems from, but I think a lot of it has to do with the drawstring. So I'm curious as to what all this will have the effect of. But I think I'm going to go ahead and attempt to size up the body of this chemise and just kind of see how it goes. Okay, so I've been looking at this a little bit more, and I feel like the issue that I'm running into that I want to really try to avoid with this current one is that because the bust is so wide on this, therefore the shoulders are wide. Because when we look at this pattern, it just goes straight out, or I mean, it's at an angle, but still it is a straight line from the shoulder all the way until the hip godette gets added in. And so I wonder, like, are we gonna tweak this to go wider? Because I don't think I want this set wider, because if it's too wide on the neckline part of it, I will need a drawstring, and if it's too wide on the shoulder, then it's going to just feel weird because the seam will be so far off the shoulder. So I do feel like once we account for that 3 inches we have to add there, that, like, I don't know, it's hard to say, but I mean, it obviously needs to be wider. It's not even getting to my side. So I have to figure out how to draw in that new line without really increasing the width of the shoulder and neckline. And that is really the challenge. Okay, I've decided that I am not going to widen the shoulder at all. And in fact, as it tapers up those extra 3 inches, it should even get a little bit narrower, which is good, I think, because otherwise we're still dealing with like pretty wide here. But by the time it gets to the bust down here, I would like to swing this out 1 inch. So instead of like the 5/8 inches or so that would be to equating this to a 26, again, I'm keeping it at a 22 up here, widening to a 26 here, because oddly enough, people's shoulders don't get this much wider with every size up. I don't understand why patterns just like never understand that. But we're gonna keep kind of widening it here. I haven't checked how wide my fabric is, so I don't know like how wide we can go. Right here, a godette is supposed to come in. So starting from here down, we put in this little triangle inset of fabric that kind of flares it out on the side. I think that was due to fabric width. If my fabric happens to be wide enough, I might honestly just cut that in one with the fabric and not have to worry about a separate piece. Most likely the other reason that a godette is used though is grain, because if you continue, especially since we are sharpening the diagonal, if you continue that out, that is going to get kind of more and more biasy as it goes down, whereas here we are cutting off that bias there, making what looks to be just about a straight grain right here, and then insetting a little triangle whose center I believe is a straight grain, meaning that these are equal but small amounts of bias on the side here, and then straight grain down the center, kind of grounding that, as opposed to just continuously swinging it out. This is our godette piece, by the way, and actually, you know what? It looks like this side of it is straight grain, so we're not centering this godette. In fact, they're calling it a gore. We're not centering it. We are having straight grain here and then swinging it out that way, which actually means that it negates everything that I've just said, and we could cut this in one if the fabric is wide enough. If they had it like I said, where the straight grain was the center of this godette or gore, then we would be balancing out the swing out of the triangle. But this is a simplicity pattern, so why would they do that? So my fabric does appear to be wide enough that I can get that godette cut out of this. Like instead of cutting it out of 2 separate pieces, I can just all cut it in one. So that's what I'm going to do, because this is already the fold over here. Both the front and the back pieces are cut on the fold. So I'm going to save myself the extra effort of cutting out all of those 4 little triangles, and I'm just going to cut it as one piece, since this pattern isn't messing with grains anyway, which is really the reason that that would be done other than fabric width. We might as well save ourselves the trouble. So this green line is my new line for cutting this all out. I think this is going to work. I haven't yet drawn in the hem shape because, as you can see, this is curved up a little bit. So I did shorten this because it just seemed so long. It's like past the knees. I didn't think that chemises really went that long. So yeah, I've shortened it. So it is now like a couple inches longer than my old one, but it's still significantly shorter here. Though really, is it significantly shorter here? Because I've actually added that back up in the shoulder. So really it's the same length. But this, I want to now unfold this and then use that to give me my new hem shape to that. And I realized I'm pretty positive the front and back are exactly the same shape with the exception of the neckline. So I think I will then just use this new cut out piece of the fabric to cut the back, but with a higher neckline up here, because that's really the difference. So yeah, that's how it's looking with the little godette already added in. It's just gonna go straight out. And of course, because I know you always want to see her, here's a sleeping Maisie. If this is not supposed to have a drawstring in this neckline, there is an issue, because this is my camisole that I wear every day, and really like none of my necklines I think are pretty much like lower than that. Also this is like falling off my shoulders. So clearly this is very wide, because I did not widen this neckline. I actually narrowed it slightly because I think I wound up cutting the size 14 neckline. Yeah, it's really, really wide. I hope that adding a drawstring in here will like help things. Like, it is a square base neckline, which I don't think my old one is, so maybe that will help. It is also still like relatively fitted on the hips. I haven't tried to sit down yet, but it feels like there's not a ton of ease here. Not what I would think there should be on the hips. So this is interesting. I'm gonna move forward with sleeves, I think, but I don't know how this is gonna go. I did test sitting down. There is enough ease just for me to sit down. Clearly this pattern is like the opposite of plus size friendly, because I already added to these hips. So thinking about like where it would have started, wow. Yeah, this is apparently built for someone who is built like this. This is this pattern. So again, I am going to put sleeves on. We're going to see how this goes, but I have zero faith in what the outcome of this pattern is going to be. So the way that this sleeve pattern works is that there is a gusset in the armpit. So that does widen out the armpit and provides more motion, or more range of motion. So I need to take that measurement of like what is basically the diagonal half of the gusset plus this, to make sure that that is what I actually need to get around my arm, because generally speaking I have to increase the width of sleeves. My arms are usually too big for sleeve patterns. The fact that this is already a size 22 instead of, you know, presumably the size 26, or with this pattern size who knows what. So I have to measure that and see what is going to work. And again, I am going to shorten this sleeve because I don't want mine to be quite this long. I don't know exactly how much I'm going to shorten it by. Probably at least a couple of inches is my guess. I don't necessarily need my chemise sleeve to be as short as like my old one was, but I do want it to be short enough that I can wear it under Regency short sleeves. So yeah, we're gonna have to do some math, figure out how to increase this. I don't think I'm gonna increase the gusset at all, though I did measure this against the gusset in my old chemise. This is smaller. Like, this is the finished gusset size of my old chemise, meaning there would be seam allowance around all of this. So maybe it's possible that I should be increasing this one as well, because otherwise I may wind up with quite a small gusset once we take out 5/8 inch on every side of this, because that's what the seam allowances are for this pattern. Yeah, I'm gonna measure things, see what needs to be tweaked, and we'll see where we go from there with sleeves. So the width around what will go into the arm size 21 7/8 with all the seam allowances taken out, which is this on me. So that is pretty small. I don't think it is supposed to be that. I'm also slightly confused. I haven't tried to figure out how that fits into this arm's eye, but obviously I did extend the shoulder significantly. So I think that's what has made this arm's eye so large. And I feel like I want a measurement that goes down to here, which is not 21 7/8 inch. However, I don't know if maybe this is now too low and should come up a little further. Generally speaking, if you do have an arm's eye seam that goes fairly high into your armpit, it actually leads to more range of motion. Obviously, you don't want it too small because it's going to be uncomfortable and it's going to dig into your armpit. And with a gusset kind of in and of itself allows for more range of motion. I don't know the physics or engineering to tell you if like that gusset is also part of the original factor, and so we're actually just adding in that extra piece, and that is why there's more range of motion. Like, I don't know exactly how that works, but I know that gussets allow for more range of motion. That's why you see gussets on theatrical and dance costumes like all over the place. But yeah, so I don't know. I feel like this needs to come up at least a little bit because this seems very low, but I don't know that this needs to come up the full like 3 inches. I think it might be more like 1 inch. So I am going to make this sleeve larger, because the other part of this is that like just the sleeve part would wind up being 16, I think it was 16 and a quarter, I want to say off the top of my head. 16 and a quarter, if we look at that, is not my arm. So 16 and a quarter gets up to here before it is too small. So obviously, like, that is going to be where the bottom of the gusset is. So I'm pretty sure that needs to be larger. So I think that science engineering wise, increasing the sleeve to something more like 18 and a half, 19 inches like wide just on the sleeve portion, that is probably what I need. And that hopefully, I guess we'll just kind of see how far that gets as far as what this armscye currently is. And if I need to kind of then just pinch close like a little extra bit of the side seam here. So yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna extend this by like an inch and a half on each side of the sleeve. I think I'm going to leave the gusset as is. Hopefully that works. And I am going to shorten the sleeve, but I haven't decided by how much yet. This is my new sleeve shape. You can see I have angled it out up at the top. I have shortened this by 2 inches, but honestly, I think it might need to go further. I am going to leave the gusset as is, so hopefully that will work. I've decided with the way that this neckline just seemed to be sinking lower and lower and lower to actually pull up the shoulders and shorten them. So I took an extra 1/2 inch out of both front and back, just the whole seam. I think that's better. I hope it's not still too low. I feel like we're still going to have a drawstring in here. And I actually also wonder if the back is not too high now. So as I could always scoop that out lower, but I feel like maybe with 18th century, I guess like everything is a higher back with 18th century, but because I'm also using this for Regency, Regency has some stuff that is a lower back for evening. And I feel like that is very high. So yeah, actually I'm going to need to scoop that out because there's no way that's going to work for Regency. I'll probably just drop that down an extra 1/2 inch, just kind of scoop that out lower. But I do feel like this is better for everything. So yeah, let's put some sleeves in because I've now serged all these pieces. So we are going to sew all of these little bits together and see what happens when we add it to this body. So if you've never done a gusset before, the tricky thing to kind of wrap your head around is how things go together. So when we start, we are just doing between the small dots here, there was one here, I ironed it off, but we're just attaching that to one side like this. You are only going to sew to the dot. So you want to leave the seam allowance free. And then what's going to happen now that we've sewn that, and I think that we press that this way, by the way, I couldn't quite remember, but I'm pretty sure we have to press it out because we're going to be treating this from here all the way down as one. So that's the thing. Now we are going to pull this over, line up over here, but also line up down here and stitch all of that. Really, right now, we're actually just stitching this. We're going to do this in a separate pass, but we are going to stitch that together, and that is going to create our little gusset there in the armpit. So see, now that we have our gusset sewn in at the top of the sleeve sections, we are going to pin and sew together that rest of the sleeve down here. But these little sections right here, they just match up right together. You can see the stitching goes right to the corner, and then that gives us the seam allowance free down here to put back together. So interestingly, what I'm running into now is that I actually have too much sleeve for the armscye opening. I mean, for one thing, I did shorten the armscye just a little bit, and of course I increased the dimension of the sleeve. I did put this on for just a moment, like just the sleeve itself before I started pinning it in here, and it does seem to like just barely fit. So I think that I need this amount of sleeve, but I think what it's going to mean is that we are going to open up the side seam a little bit here and actually start the gusset a little bit lower. Hopefully that's okay. I mean, in a way, by shaping the sleeve the way that I did, I actually started to almost create a gusset out of the sleeve itself, which is possible, but I do feel like these kind of work a little bit better. What is also interesting is because the sleeve was increased down here where it went into the gusset, my markings here, like my hash marks, they actually almost line up. They're like a 1/4 inch off. So that was interesting. Just by like taking the excess out of here, they wound up matching up. But we're going to open up this seam so that we can actually sew this in all the way and see how it goes. Well, we have sleeves. They are definitely still too long. Like I need to chop off before I can hem. They do mostly fit. I do feel like it's a little bit snug. I guess it's right at the base of the gusset. It's still a little snug. At this point, there's really nothing that I can do about that besides completely redoing the sleeves. I'm not going to do that because there's other issues in this that it's like, it's not worth fixing that. Let's be honest, at this point, I am feeling like I will not wind up using this chemise. Maybe I'll change my mind, or maybe I will have it as a backup for those occasions when I have like multiple costume events in like multiple days and want a fresh chemise for the second day and don't mind kind of, you know, having the second tier. I've got that with my Victorian stuff too. Like I have 3 or 4 Victorian chemises at this point, and I definitely have like a top tier, second tier, third tier. And when I'm doing like the Port Townsend Victorian Festival, it's like, okay, here's the good one for day 1, or when I'm doing the most activity, and then yeah. So the biggest thing here is that I don't know if it's because it is snug here. Possibly. It's also, I'm sure that the neckline is just way too wide, which we've known since I first put it on. But as soon as I put my arms down, this goes right off my shoulders, which is really, really frustrating. Like obviously it's worse now than it was without the sleeves. We knew it was bad even before I added the sleeves. We knew it was falling off my shoulders. I have very narrow shoulders, and apparently humans are not meant to be built as plus size with narrow shoulders because nothing ever fits right, particularly from a sewing pattern. I'm sure there's a lot of you out there that share this dilemma, but yeah, it's frustrating. It's super frustrating. So I guess there's like 2 ways that we could do this. One, we could see if a drawstring through the neckline will actually solve all of this. I don't have high hopes for that. Honestly, I do not. The other way is that I could basically take a tuck. I actually wound up doing this on my like 1850s, 1860s chemise. There is a tuck, maybe even 2 tucks in the center front and I think center back because the neckline was too wide. Every time I put my arm down, every time. I don't know why such a simple project is so frustrating, but now I understand why I have not made another one of these in 14.5 years. I mean, it's probably this width. I could maybe give myself a 1/2 inch by making my seam allowances smaller. I don't know that that's enough to solve this issue, but it is definitely frustrating. I think I'm going to try and do that, redo that a little bit just to give myself a little bit more room where that gusset comes together, because the rest of the sleeve honestly feels pretty fine. Like tightness wise, it's just that point right there where that gusset is coming together. I don't mind the gusset coming down a little lower here. I feel like that is fine. But between the already way too wide neckline and the sleeve being just a little bit too tight there, like this is where I want this to sit. And I know that like some necklines are wider than this, including a lot of 18th century. I feel like they sit a little wide, but if anything for me sits wider than here, it immediately falls off my shoulder. I have a pretty big divot in my shoulder, like where my straps go. You can see it right there. And so if anything sits further out than this divot, it falls immediately off my shoulder because my shoulders are pretty sloped. So again, there's probably a lot of you like me out there, and it's frustrating and it's annoying. So I think I'm going to try doing a tuck in, at least in the back, because what I could do, like this actually feels decent fitting wise, like the length here, now that I've taken up the shoulders, it feels pretty decent. So what I could do is I could have a little drawstring in just this portion right here. I think that that would work pretty well, but I can't also have one in the back. So I think I need a tuck in the back to just make a little like pleat, like a little box pleat right in the center back there, just to get rid of all of that gapage. And then I also am going to attempt to take this out just a little bit, and then we'll add a drawstring here. So we'll see if that combination of fixes is actually helpful, but I'm gonna go do at least the tuck and the sleeves right now, and then we'll see at that point if we are ready to like turn hems, because that's all that's left at this point other than fixing the fit issues. Is we got to turn the hem at the bottom, we've got to shorten and turn the hem at the sleeves, and we've got to turn the hem around the neckline and apparently add a drawstring into the front. So I'm gonna go do all that. All right, so I have cut 1 inch off of the bottom of the sleeves. I have taken that little bit out where the gusset comes into, so I gave myself probably about a 1/2 inch extra room in that spot, kind of tapering it out, probably about 1.5 inches above and below that section. And then I also made a little tuck in the back here. I think the tuck is helping a lot, for one thing. I am still, like, it's still falling off my shoulders. Not as badly as it was before, but it is still definitely like I can feel it getting pulled down. So I don't know at this point what there is to help that. I think part of the issue too is just how wide this shoulder is before we even get to the seam. Like if this was here, that might be better, but that would mean resetting the entire sleeve. And this project just isn't good enough for me to do that. Like, I don't know that that's really going to make an improvement. So I'm just going to go ahead and hem all of my edges. I do think that this length of sleeve now, once we hem it, that's going to be fine. So I'm going to hem the neckline, put a little drawstring in this section right here, hem the sleeves, hem the hem, and we will have a finished chemise. Will I ever wear it? Your guess is as good as mine, but I'm going with probably not. Well, here is the finished shift or chemise. It is definitely still wanting to pull off the shoulders, though, I mean, to be honest, my existing one does that too, so maybe this is not the worst. I do appreciate that it has a more squared out neckline, because one of the issues that I have with my old shift is that it always cinches in here, and I think that really is because the drawstring in that neckline goes all the way around. Also, I don't remember if the neckline in that one is even cut square, but beyond that, the drawstring goes all the way around, which means that it cinches in equally. This one, I just anchored the edges of the ribbon down with a zigzag stitch right here inside the like folded over edge, and that allows me to just cinch in this area right here. I mean, right now it has that feeling like it's going to fall off my shoulders, mostly in the back, but it is not actually falling off my shoulders, so maybe this is actually going to work. I do wonder if I made the sleeves just a little bit too long still. I guess we'll have to wait and see when I wear this with a Regency dress how that works, but at this point I'm going to keep them as is and just see how it goes. Obviously, this pattern is designed to be worn with 18th century, where you're never going to have a short sleeve, but with Regency you then are going to have a short sleeve, and I use mine for, again, everything from 18th century through really the 1830s. But yeah, overall, I mean, I'm not mad at it. Like, as annoying as this pattern was, I think that the drawstring kind of came in and saved it in the end. Plus, of course, all of the little fixes that I did, like the big old tuck right in the center back there. This would not be staying on if I had not made that tuck. But yeah, overall, I'm not mad at it. I do wish that it was more roomy around the hips. I feel like the thing with a chemise is that, you know, when you're going to the bathroom, you kind of scoop everything up in it, and it's going to be harder with this because it isn't as full as my other chemise. But overall, again, I mean, I don't hate it. I probably will actually use it. So I know, big turnaround from like the last clip to this one. Honestly, just like turning in the neckline and adding that drawstring made so much of a difference. So if you do make this pattern, I would recommend making it narrower in the neckline if you have narrow shoulders like me, and or adding a tuck and a drawstring, because that is the saving grace going on here. So yeah, lots of changes to this pattern. Would I recommend the pattern? No, I would not. Regardless really of what you are built like. If you are plus size, don't make this pattern. Like, it's not plus size friendly. It is I would almost say one of the least plus size friendly patterns that I have encountered, specifically because this is meant to be a very, very simple project. And because it is so anti plus size, it has turned into completely not a simple project. So yeah, if you're plus size, don't make this pattern. However, if you are plus size, I want to know if you have done a good shift or chemise pattern for like 18th century Regency, etc. If you have made one in the past, what's the pattern that you used? I really want to know, because maybe I want to make that one too, make it better than this one, you know? So please do give me your pattern recommendations down below in the comments, because I would really love to hear of great success stories. And actually, if you have experience with this pattern and you have made this before, I would love to hear your take on this too. I know that obviously the American Duchess patterns are super popular, but I have now made 3 of the patterns and I have had major issues with all 3 of them, because if you go back like 2 or 3 years, might have even honestly been to 2021, I made the like 1790s pattern too. I'll link that video up here if you want to go check that out. And of course, if you haven't seen the Robe à la Francaise series, that is linked down below in the description. So yeah, I would really love to hear you guys' takes on the American Duchess simplicity patterns, because I have found that they are, generally speaking, worse than your average simplicity patterns. And I don't know if that's just me or if that's like the overall experience that everyone has had. But yeah, that's going to be it for this video. Don't forget that if you were interested in joining the Ireland trip, there are just, I think, 3 weeks left at the time of the publishing of this video for you to sign up for that trip. So definitely go check out all of that information down below. But yeah, if you like this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube at least once a week, usually with sewing vlogs like this out on Tuesdays, and sometimes with additional costuming or sewing related content out on Saturdays. But I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below, or you can send me a super thanks or join my YouTube channel memberships right here on YouTube below the video. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my awarding level patrons, Jean, Kim, and the Dowager Duchess Isabel Thompson. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!